Coach Preston, thank you for taking time with us, especially since it's 12:30 back in Hamilton. I'm sure you're tired, especially after three consecutive matches. We're going to go all over the place with this interview. Let's start with the match tonight. What were your overall impressions of the match?
I thought Pepperdine served extremely tough. We handled it for as long as we could, but eventually it eroded our passing, and then our offense ended up struggling after that too. We got really, really predictable. But I thought for the first part of the match, we kind of defended as well as we wanted to, and then their serving kind of broke that down, and we couldn't get the ball in our hands in the second half as much as we wanted to. So.
One of you guys took obviously the second set. One of the keys to that was stopping Harthauler. What were the keys to that?
Well, we tried to serve an option out as much as we could, and we did that, and then we were able to focus on it. But that ball to the left side is so fast for us. We're not used to defending against that speed, so we really tried to get that block working outside in for us, and it worked in the second half because we served well enough. But then that stopped in the last two sets, and then he had a couple more free looks than we would have liked.
I know as a coach you don't want to identify a specific player, but what players stood out for you on your side?
I thought Paul Jędrzejewski, our libero, handled probably the toughest serving that he's faced in a long, long time. I thought he kept us in rhythm as much as he could. I thought he was pretty good, and then Danny Demyanenko had a night at the net from a blocking point of view as well as an offensive point of view. So I thought those two guys probably stood out the most to me tonight.
Well, let's dovetail off of that. So you seem at points that you were subbing at the libero position quite liberally. Is that something that playing an exhibition match affords you, or is that something that you actually do during the regular season?
It's something we've been doing this year. Our league started with the two libero rule this year. This is the first year that we've been able to do it. We're allowed to change our libero every set, but this is the first year we're allowed to play with two. So fortunately, through our recruiting, we were able to get one of the top liberos in the country to commit, and we already have Paul Jędrzejewski in the roster. So we've got two really good liberos, and I'm trying to get them both as much exposure as I can. And Powell's really comfortable holding the serve right now, and Jordan Pereira is really comfortable in the backcourt right now. So trying to use both libero strengths, get them as much as we can. At some point, perhaps maybe down the road in the season, we'll get back to one, but right now we're going to try and stay with two as much as we can so we can build the depth in that.
And the other part of the match that you touched on was the blocks. Yesterday you guys combined for over 23 blocks combined. It's a strength of both of your teams, but today you started off really strong. I think in the first two sets you guys were up 8.5 to 1 block, and then Pepperdine made an adjustment and came back. Can you comment on Pepperdine's adjustments and also what the block means to both of your teams?
Well, I think the block is a definite correlation to your serving strength, and I think that your numbers are bang on in the first set or first two sets because we served better, as I said earlier, and then that kind of eroded for us in the last two. So if you don't serve very well, your block's going to be all over the map, and so I think the combination of that serve block coordination is really, really important. Pepperdine served amazing tonight, and so therefore, when your offense gets that predictable, Pepperdine's blocks is going to put you in a lot of trouble, which is exactly what happened in the fourth set. We just couldn't get out. They were ripping the cover off the ball. We were trying to do everything we could to just basically defend the serve, and then their block took over after that. So I think it's a direct correlation to your serving strength of how well you can block, and I think part of the reason that we've been a good blocking team so far this year is because we've also been a good serving team.
One of the key features of playing in Pepperdine is the low roof here at Firestone, and it came into play a couple of times tonight, and I'd imagine it did yesterday. How did that affect your guys' performance?
Well, it's just an unusual rule for us. We don't play it off the roof at our place, and fortunately in our facility, our roof is not in play. Our roof is very, very high, so we don't have to worry about that too much. So it's a little bit unusual, but it's unusual for both teams. They're a little bit more familiar with it. But the reality of it is the only thing it really affects is probably digging. But I think tonight there was one occasion where we served the ball and they shanked it and it hit the roof and they came back. But after that, it's more defensive. So, hey, it is what it is. When you're in the United States, you know that you're going to play those rules, and we just do what we can with it.
Another thing that it seemed like you did tonight was, as a team, there was a change of pace or a concerted effort to have a change of pace from serve to serve, even within servers. Is that something that you guys concentrate on, or just did something tonight?
No, it's definitely something we concentrate on. I equate it to pitching in baseball. I think if you're throwing high heat all day, the passers or the batters are going to be, getting in good rhythm. And I think sometimes as a serving team, the more you can change some pace, it keeps your passers off of rhythm. And so I think we've got some good servers, and I think the more that they can mix that up, the more it keeps a team out of balance. They're not really sure. And I think, there's a case, one clear tonight, where we served a float serve to the 5-6 seam and it dropped clear. And I think that's a byproduct of the strategy that you're talking about. So it's on purpose. It's something we work at, and hopefully we'll continue to get better at it.
I noticed during the match that the bench did some kind of, I don't know what to call it, for lack of a better term, a dance that you seem to do after only points that you lost.
Yeah.
What is that?
That's actually from our strength and conditioning staff. That's a active engagement. So when we lose a point, the guys do a small mobility move. They've got a sequence of moves that they're responsible for. It's basically just to help try and keep our bench engaged, so that if there is a substitution, they're not cold coming into the match.
Nice. Let's talk about just outside of this match, volleyball. So obviously this is part of a trip that American Swing. You first hosted Ohio State late last year, and then you came to Concordia before coming to Pepperdine. How did you come about picking those 4 matches?
Well, I've got a good relationship with a lot of coaches in the U.S. from my national team involvement. I've been coaching for 25 years, so we've developed some good relationships with Ohio State, with Pepperdine, with some other schools. Long Beach State, they just happen to be having a different schedule, and it was harder at this time of year because of the outrigger and the UCSB tournament. So it was harder to line up some matches. Fortunately, Marv had a couple matches that were still left on his schedule, and I think it's great for both teams because you get to try some things with your lineup. You get to do some things that maybe you wouldn't be as comfortable playing one of your league opponents. So there's little competitive cost to it. These matches they're not expensive from a competitive point of view, from a rankings point of view, and that kind of stuff, but they can be competitive within the match. So it's a good level of volleyball. Fortunately, we're very fortunate to have this opportunity, but from a competitive point of view, it doesn't cost us much back home.
Could you also maybe compare the teams that you've played? How does say Ohio State compare to Pepperdine?
They're both extremely well coached, really talented teams. You're splitting hairs on both of those teams. I think the strengths are, obviously Surgeon is a really good strength for Ohio State, and they rely on that a lot. I think they're both really, really strong serving teams. And I think from a blocking point of view, Pepperdine seemed to have a little bit more of a strength, or gave us more trouble that way. But from a serving point of view, they were really good. I'm really impressed with Ohio State's libero as well. He's top notch. So anything that they didn't block, they ended up digging. So they both defend really, really well. But I think Pepperdine might have an edge in the blocking, but they serve so well. Both of those strengths take root.
How would you compare the top American teams to the top Canadian teams?
It's one of the things that I think are pretty much aligned. I think Alberta, Trinity Western, Manitoba, ourselves, some of the top teams in Canada line up pretty well against the American teams. And I think, the population in the United States, with being 10 times what it is in Canada, allows for that depth a little bit more. So I think, there's more good teams in the United States, but I think the top of the top compare pretty well.
And how would you compare the college game in Canada versus the college game United States in terms of the way the game is played? You mentioned the two libero system. What other differences are there? And then also, can you comment about the support that you guys get and also how recruiting works?
Well, let's go back and work those backwards. Recruiting is a 24/7, 365 for us. We don't have blackout periods. We don't have signing dates. We're not allowed to offer a letter of intent before 12 months out, before they start school. But other than that, I would like to see that maybe revisited somehow, because it's becoming a full-time job, recruiting. So it becomes, as I say, it becomes a labor. We've been very fortunate at it. McMaster is a difficult school to recruit to, because academically it's very demanding, and our volleyball program is very demanding. So the number of student athletes that can handle all that is limited. But we've been pretty fortunate in the last little bit. The support we get from our university is outstanding. We packed the house against Ohio State we put over 2,000 people in the stands.
Nice.
We had to turn a couple hundred away. We are very, very well supported in the Hamilton area and the volleyball community. So from that perspective, we're very, very fortunate.
Nice.
So I think that probably the biggest games in and out of the technical components is the ball for the United States and the Canadian game. The molten ball is a really good serving ball. You can really grab it and get a hold of it. The McMaster ball that we use is a floater. We have 4 float servers on in our program, and with the McMaster ball, that becomes a really good strength. With the molten ball, it nullifies it. So I think we're built for our ball, and that you can really tell that. But the reality of it is, for us, I think that's probably the biggest difference outside of the technical components.
Okay. When did you before you set out on the trip, what were your expectations for the trip, and did you meet those expectations?
Well, when you talk about the whole expectations, wins and losses, we were 0-3, so we can't complete that part of the conversation. So we weren't satisfied with that. We know that. But from a performance point of view, I thought we started off serving pretty well. Then we started serving and passing really well. Tonight, our offense started to take root. We hit it almost 30% as a team tonight. From our numbers, high 20s, which is very different than the other two. So I think we took some steps to do that, and we did it against some pretty tough opponents. So from the wins and loss perspective, we're not very happy about it. But from a performance point of view, we've only trained 4 times in the last month and a half. So we have an exam period in December. And we're a training-based volume team. We do very simple stuff, and we do it over and over and try and work the repeatability out of it. And so with only training four times in the last month and a half, I couldn't really expect that we'd be at our mid-season form. And we weren't. But I thought we did a pretty good job of what we got. No excuses. It was a tough trip for us, but we got back healthy, and we got back better than we came.
Well, thank you for taking time with us, and safe travels back to Hamilton.
Hey, thanks. You do a great job. Love watching your work.
Thank you.